crises are your issue or not. And then you have to know what your goals are, which give teeth to your purpose and priorities. How are you going to live that out? And then ultimately, you have to have a daily system for taking action. And it sounds like one of the things you did, you took on that weekly, you started making a weekly expectations and outcomes list so that in essence, you had goals for the week. You knew where you wanted to spend your time, and you were reviewing that week by week by week. Mm-hmm. And that was one of the things that came out of that goals webinar. If you missed it, is oftentimes we don't have review intervals, what I call a review interval, so that we come back to and remind ourselves what's important so we will continue to move forward. I just wanted to give some context for that for those of you who weren't in on that. But it sounds like what was really instrumental for you was weekly coming back to what is important, what is important, what is important. So, okay. Very good, very good. And are you still doing that? Not to put you in a pop quiz mode here.
Yes. Oh, yes. And what I've done too is, what can I do in 68 hours? Because I broke the week down 168 hours, and I took away the 100 that I had for other things. That basically I had 40 hours for sleep and 60 hours for work. So that took away 100, left me 68. So at the top of my weekly expectations and outcomes, I put what can I do in 68 hours.
Wow.
And then I figure it from there.
So 68 became your discretionary time, if you will.
Yes.
Wow.
And now, that's a lot of hours that I didn't know I had.
Yeah. Say that again.
It's a lot of hours that I didn't realize I had, but I had been wasting them instead of using them.
Wow, powerful statement. I was wasting them instead of using them. A lot of hours you had. I've never seen anybody break that down, but you're doing at a, I'll call it, you're doing at a macrocosm, a weekly level, what we really encourage people to do at a daily level. And I think it's good to do both. And here's what I mean by that. For those of you who aren't familiar with it, one of the things we teach is we have what we call a 15-minute time increment worksheet, okay? And the 15-minute time increment worksheet, it breaks the day down into, surprise here, 15 minutes, right? And we will tell people to come up with their to-do list and then go to this 15-minute time increment sheet and begin to work at putting in place what you're going to do. But one of the things that where people often make a mistake in this is they don't account for, this stuff that's going to happen regardless of what you have on your to-do list. Like, I'm going to get so much sleep. I'm going to have to eat at noon, and that's going to not take me 30 minutes. But if I'm going to drive and meet someone for lunch, and then I've got to drive back, and what I think of as a 30-minute lunch is really an hour out of my day. So now, my 24 hours is minus 7 or 8 for sleeping, minus X amount for meals, minus X amount for showering and getting ready and walking the dog. And there's all these little, things we take for granted that time is going to be spent on in the day. And what I love about what you did at a weekly level was you isolated all the stuff kind of that you knew was going to have to happen and identified how much honest to goodness discretionary time do I have. And Allison recently shared with us, she was sharing with me where she had written down what she thought she needed to do for the day. And she put times by each one of those things and realized, I think it was Allison, like you had 7.5 hours of work that you had in mind, right?
Yes, when I was creating my to-do list, and this was, I think, for Monday, actually, I think it was for yesterday. I sent it out via an email to some friends. When I looked at what I had 3 hours of time that I could work, but on my to-do list, I had tasks that were going to take 7.5 hours. So I think what you're talking about is becoming aware of the limitation that we have on the time that we have. And we are live on YouTube as we go through this. So I do want to welcome those people. And John, even though we're a time management company, today what we've done is we're interviewing Hani because I think it's hard for people to come in and understand the full depth of the 7-minute life. And so what Hani's telling us today is kind of how she got started. I love what she's saying is that, yes, we have 168 hours in a week, but I guess if you have to sleep and you have to work and you have to eat and drive to the grocery store and all of those things, it narrows down the amount of time we truly have to get things done. And the tools that she's going to be talking about have been sitting on her desk for years. And so she had the tools. I don't know that it's so much about just having the tools sitting on your desk. I think what Hani is talking about, just like this 15-minute increment, is that the awareness of how painful it is to have, for me, 7 hours worth of to-dos when I truly only had 3 hours to get it done. What happens in that time is that I still try to get the 7 hours done, and I miss out on sleep. I miss out on time with my family. I end up not eating lunch until it's dinner time. So I think that awareness is the key of what we're talking about. But the people that are on this call, a lot of people have no idea of why it's so hard to get started. And so I'm interested, Hani, in seeing, what was the first step that you took? I know these webinars are really helpful, but where was that coming over the hump of realizing, hey, these tools, but how are they going to impact your life? And what was that first step that you took?
The 15 minutes. I have today's down. I don't know if you can see it, but when I actually filled it in, I've only got those little arrows worth of time that I actually have today to actually do something.
Okay. So, if people are new to this, can you literally walk us step by step how you filled out that and what sections are free? Can you literally take us through that?
I get up at 4 a.m. and I basically get ready, have my coffee around 4:30 or 5, do my email. I had a resume that my hours at the job I'm on now have been cut back. So I'm doing a resume for Dartmouth University. Then I had to leave at 7 to take my husband to work because we share the car. We have extra cars, but we have a real estate course that we're taking. So I take him to work to simplify things. Then I had to get groceries and I came home and did the wash. That left it basically the webinar. So we're on the webinar now. When I get done with the webinar, I hope to take a 2-mile walk. And other than that, I have basically, I'm on Eastern time. So I have from 1:30 until 3 p.m. free that I could do something with. And then again, it's travel. It's because we're headed to the real estate course. We have a meeting before the real estate course. Then we have the real estate course that ends at 9:30. Then we travel home and we should get home by about 11.
Okay. So I've interrupted you. Here's why I wanted you to go through that. As people are listening to this, even if you're new to the 7-minute life, we have 2 things that I call. One is prescripted time, and the other is unscripted. And when you look at your life, there are so many people that prescribe how you're going to use your time. In other words, you have to get groceries. You have to drive to work. You have to do things like today, I have to play tennis tonight. Those are the things. But when you look at your calendar right now, how much time have you been able, and John, I see you've written awareness, how much time do you really have today to get things done? And the hard part is a lot of times we don't know what to get done. So in that hour and a half we have left, we're now trying to figure out what we need to do, how to plan it, how to get the resources, how to take the action. So all of a sudden you planned for an hour and a half and you end up having gotten nothing done. So John, I want to turn it back over to you for the concepts that you've written down there of awareness, of knowing what you need to do, but also having other people prescript your work and having very little time. How do you overcome that, John?
Okay. Yeah, I think there's several things that I want to flag in that. The two awarenesses that I wanted to highlight for people that you have to have, or you'll be stuck because you'll get more expectations on you than you can realistically do. And then we either shut down or something or things keep getting pushed to the side again and again and again and again. And those become our stuck things. They become the things that are just unmercifully anchored on our to-do list and shame us, to be blunt about it. And what's critical, there were two types of awareness. One is coming to understand, the true time available to you. That when you wake up in the day, you don't have the whole day because of the things that are prescripted, that are going to have to happen, whether you like it or not. And these may be things you love, but they're time that you've already made some kind of prior decision around, or someone has for you. That when we look at those, we realize that we actually have preciously little discretionary time. And that was it sounds like that was one of the first awarenesses that you really came to, or that you've been nurturing, Hani, so that you go into your day and like today, okay, I really only have that box with the arrows pointing at it. I've got about 2 hours for whatever's on my to-do list because everything else is spent already. It's almost like you're making a budget for your time, like you budget dollars. And if we were to sit down, you have some expenses that are fixed expenses. They're going to happen like it or not. And you have limited dollars coming in, you have fixed expenses. You have to find out, what discretionary dollars you have. And most of us aren't taking time to realistically see how much time we do have that's discretionary. So that's the first piece of awareness that we have to come to break this cycle of over planning. And over planning is the nemesis of moving forward. And then the other thing that you mentioned, Hani, right off the bat was really beginning to recognize the difference between urgent and important. What is it that truly absolutely needs my time? And what is it that's something I'm just jumping to? And I sometimes describe those choices as choices between could or should. And what I mean by that, there are some things we should do, we need to do. There are other things we could do, and I have to do this when people come to me and say, hey, can you, teach a class next Wednesday for me? Okay, well, I may have the time free. I may have the knowledge. And yes, I can and I could, but should I? Is it the highest and best use of my time? And that is an awareness we have to come to of being very clear about where we want our time spent, because we cannot get it back. Once we expend it, it's gone. And so we've got to be clear on those purpose and priorities and what's most important to you. Otherwise, you're going to keep saying yes to things you could do, whether you should or not. And those two have to work in concert with one another all the time. So those are two. And it sounds like you nurtured this awareness through two disciplines. One is you have that weekly expectation and accomplishment sheet that you fill out. And the other is use that 15-minute increment sheet. And The weekly expectation is, I think, where you're defining what's going to be important for you that week. That's where you're driving your awareness up of, okay, when somebody asks me to do something, is it going to take me away from this? Am I still going to be able to get this done? So, that weekly expectation builds this awareness for you. And the 15-minute time increment sheet tells you, okay, this is how much time I have, budgeted time I have available to me. And now, what can I do in that time? And I loved how you asked the question in a very positive way, where you asked yourself, what can I accomplish in 68 hours? What can I get done in 68 hours? And you are before those, this is so critical. Everybody highlight it, put a big star on this, something in your brains. But you are proactively asking and planning for that discretionary time rather than going into your day and waiting till you get to a break and going, okay, what needs attention right now? I think that's how many of us manage our lives. And that's where we have things we intend to do and we never, ever get to them because we have no intention. We have no plan. We go into the day with a loose sense of a bunch of stuff that could happen or might need attention. And we keep moving along with stuff that has to happen until we get a break. And when that break comes, we just look at what's on fire and start stamping as fast as we can. And before we know it, it's 5 o'clock. And the stuff we thought needed attention, we've never touched it. Would you say that's pretty true to where you were? And
absolutely. I spent my whole life putting out fires that had nothing to do with me, nothing to do with where I wanted to go.
Yeah. And it's very, how does it feel? The difference between how you feel now that you have this awareness, how does that feel versus how you felt when you were stamping fires constantly? The quality of life, if I can get at that.
Calm and peaceful and in control, whereas before I felt like I was one step away from a nervous breakdown every minute.
And you probably were, literally. You very well could have been. Because those of you who have not been on a call before, I've been through depression pretty seriously a couple times when I was living that fire stamping lifestyle. And I actually had someone about a week ago ask me, they said, and this was kind of a new epiphany for me. They said, you seem like you're 100% on and you're always doing something and doing 100 things. And I said, yeah, that's pretty accurate, And they said, how do you burn out? And I was like, no, I don't. And they're like, how do you not burn out? And I talked to them about some of my routines, which are some of the things you shared. And I said, those are like bumper guards at a bowling alley that keep me going in the gutter, those routines. But I realized after the fact, and that's what I told them in the moment, but I realized after the fact that I don't burn out now because 80% of that 100% I'm doing, I really love and I'm clear about. It's what I want to be doing. And, if you're doing 20 hours, you can do 20 hours of work you don't want to be doing, and it will wipe you out for the other 148 left over. You can spend 100 hours working at what you love. And even if you are very tired, very exhausted, you're simultaneously buoyant, calm, and exuberant. So coming to terms with, or coming to a place where you can stop saying yes to all of these things that are people's monkeys and start saying yes instead to your health and your goals and your purpose and your priorities and your family and exercise and rest, It's just a completely different quality of life is what I'm hearing you say. Mm-hmm. And you kind of baby stepped your way into it. It wasn't like you waved a magic wand. It sounds like the first step was you just started tracking what were your weekly expectations and outcomes.
Yeah.
And then you layered in doing the 15-minute increment. And you walked us through your increment sheet. But could you say a word about like how you put it together? I mean, what I mean by that is like you sit down, do you kind of like look at your calendar and think about the day and start blocking out spaces for, what's that process like? Do you do that the night before, the morning, a little of both? Can you say a word about that?
A little of both.
Okay.
But mostly the night before, just blocking out, okay, these are prescripted. These are something that I have to do and block those out. They're off the table.
Yeah.
And then in the morning, that's when I use the time more to say, okay, what's the best and highest use of my time? What would really be a good thing to do today with what I have?
Okay. So you figure out, you kind of go to bed knowing the containers, I'll call it that. Like, I've got a little space over here and I've got a little space over there, but by and large, I'm busy the rest of the time. Mm-hmm. So you go to bed knowing what's available to you. And then in the morning, you kind of commit to or plan your intention for those discretionary times. Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, let me pause a minute because we've covered a lot of ground. I mean, we've been at this, oh my goodness, already a half hour. Let me pause real quick. And I want to ask people, what questions do you have? And it can be for Hani, Allison, all of us. We can just throw it out there. But, and what is resonating out of Hani's story? But ask some questions here. So I want to make sure people, we're covering some really, really important things about how you get out of this place where you're just loading yourself with unreal expectations and then you get nothing done because you're overwhelmed and hitting what Allison calls the choke point, where you move into your day and you have so much planned and there's really not enough time. And the next thing you know, things are falling off the page that you desperately actually need to get done, but don't. I'll give it a second. There's a little bit of delay when you write questions and when we receive them. So I'll give a second there and see if, Allison, there's anything you want to add in while we're waiting to see if we got any questions.
Yes, I think what you're talking about, Hani, is really important. And John, all of those things that you're coming to about being stuck, they are worldwide. I also want to spend time, because we made a promise of how do you overcome those things. And as you're waiting on questions, which I hope people ask, Hani's really new at coming to these webinars, but she's gotten very involved. I think that the concepts that we have at the 7-Minute Life is taking that 7 minutes in the evening to create that awareness, to determine which things are really important and what's not, and then take 7 minutes in the morning to do that. But a lot of these concepts are new to our listeners. And a couple of things I want to share. One, when I look at my 15-minute increment worksheet, and I'm going to hold up a different version of that too, because you can use this. And so there's a little bit different version of it where the day is broken down in a different format. We have all kinds of tools. But when people are looking at the 7-Minute Life, they're saying, could it really be that easy? And the answer is no. I think what Hani has done is that she's immersed herself in coming to these webinars and learning one tiny thing a week, and just being able to take that, let it percolate through what she's doing. There is so much that the 7-Minute Life can offer. And let me just share a few of those things, because Hani, I really want John and I to kind of step back and let you have an opportunity to just as a monologue kind of tell people that journey. But I say that the 7-Minute Life is a time management company, so that is important to me. And let me explain that. The 7-Minute Life is a time management company providing tools and these classes so that you can live a life with purpose. And how do you do that? We share that with actual tools of how you can create your purpose in life, how to understand your priorities, what's most important. And let me just step before I turn this over to you, Hani, and I know people can see this, so let me turn there. But in the planner, as you're listening to these webinars, I want you to use the tools that are on our website where you can take, not just learn about priorities, but you can actually take tools to determine what's most important to you. Is it love? Is it friendship? Is it faith? Because what Hani is learning as I'm about to turn this over to you is that the 7-minute life is not just about how to plan your day. It's how to plan your day within a framework that's in alignment with what's most important to you. And I know as you're looking at this, we try to help people when we talk about being stuck. There's so much mental clutter that swirls in our head. It's not that we're not getting things done. So we don't have room to even think through. And then I do want to turn this over. Last thing, Hani, before I kind of want to just hear your story, is that it's time management so that you can at least have time to have personal goals. Let me recap that. The 7-minute life is a time management company. You cannot possibly learn all of it in one webinar. It's a process, it's a journey, it's a path. And our goal, my personal goal, is to teach tiny little pieces through weekly webinars, through books, through planners, through YouTube videos to help you improve your time management so that you can get more done and get the right things done, but that you can align them with your priorities, with your purpose, and with your goals. Honey, I know that the last time we talked, you thought it was a calendar. So I want to turn it completely back over to you. I want to give you 5 or so minutes without interruption. Just share your story. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Hani.
Okay. Before you invited me to the webinars, I was literally using it as a to-do list, the traditional day planner. And I've been using day planners my whole life and just filling them up with extraneous, useless things that just, I had to laugh because it came up in one of the webinars that sometimes people would put in what they had done after the day was over. And I have done that. And so my first planner basically got used as a dumping the mental clutter. I mean, that was kind of what it was used for. And then after you invited me to the webinars, I picked the tools that I thought I could use first, because it was kind of overwhelming to look through the whole thing and say, oh no. And so I knew that the 15-minute increments and the weekly expectations and outcomes would really help me with the achievable. You kept saying achievable, what's achievable. So I kind of looked at it that way. And all of a sudden, after starting to use that, the day planner's making sense. I do the mental clutter. I do the unfinished work tasks and the your highest and best, especially. I really like the highest and best page to put that down. And it all started to come together. But as long as I was using it without the training that you had provided, I was just throwing things on it and going on as though it were just a to-do list. And that was one of the things that you said over and over again. This is, so that this is not a to-do list that you can just fit more in. This is so that you can live your purpose.
I want to break in here. As I said, I'd give you five or 10 minutes, but people are new to this, that we can't even understand all that you're talking about. there's so much to this. What I'd like to know is the specifics on time management. You know, obviously the so that, which is important to me, is the outcome of what we do. But a lot of our listeners are going to say, well, okay, if I want to get unstuck, what can I do today? And so when you're planning specifically for your time management, what are some of the steps that you take to specifically the night before plan, or you wake up and you haven't done your planning, but you know, the day's coming at you? How are you physically using, you know, not just the 15-minute increment, because that is one of the most powerful things I do, but how do you let that planning run through your head? And if you only have an hour and a half to get things done, how do you make those decisions? What is that filter that things? So if you can just give us how you actually use it on a daily basis.
Okay, I use this without even thinking about it anymore. I start with the 5 before 11, because those are the tasks that are most important to me that day. So I start with what 5 things, and when I first started, it was like 50 things. And that's my 18-year-old cat. I'm sorry, she's decided she likes the webinar. So she's jumping back and forth. But I've finally gotten it down so I can, in that 7 minutes in the morning, I can sit there and think, what are the 5 most important things that I really want to accomplish today? And breaking it down from some huge, I have to do a business plan for somebody, down to, I need to do some market research today on college student housing. And really, through the training, I've learned to break it down so that it actually is something that I can actually, it's achievable. I can accomplish it in a day.
Okay, we've got a question coming in from Anita. There are 2 of them. The first one is very technical. Honey, how long does it take you to plan out your weekly expectations and the physical length of time that you use to do that?
Okay, it was taking hours. And I've got it down now because I'm more focused on my purpose, that I've got it down that I can do it in 15 or 20 minutes. It doesn't take that long to actually do it. In the beginning, it took a long time because I had so much that really didn't apply, and I really had to weed through things. But now you had the light, the detail of the light and how it would, you know, where are you going to shine the light? I was trying to shine my light everywhere, and finally I've got it so that I've got this nice little area that I can focus on, and it's taking less and less time each week.
And so as you focus on things, one of the 7-minute life theories is that we actually run into a lot of mental fatigue. And so we get tired, physically we get tired. One of the things we teach is it's not so much just how you can get more done, but it's inhibiting the feeling of trying to do everything. So I think one of the keys to people listening to this is that in order to improve your time management, you have to choose what to let go of. You have to focus on just a few things, and you have to make conscious decisions that you are not in charge of every single thing around you. And I look at that in my own life, because if I only have 3 hours, everything else is pre-scripted, other people are pulling me, or I've made decisions to be involved in things. I think it's important to choose what not to do. And I'm going to answer the second question that Anita has. And then, John, I want to turn it back over to you about how you would recommend people get started, not just with time management. And I want the 2 of you, John and Hani, to kind of wrap up and then again open to questions. But Anita says, how often do you review your purpose? And I would answer that as not often enough. I believe that if I could take, and let me grab this, if I could take time, and we're all still, learning how to do this. There it is. If we could all learn how to go through the exercises of deciding your priorities, and one of them is, for me, is mental health. I really work hard to exercise and stay healthy mentally. But if we could look and physically hold in our hands the things that are most important to us, how often do you review it? We should review it every day. What's most important to me? Faith, wisdom, prayer, grace and mercy, compassion, love and family. Am I making time to do those things? And then this is my purpose. We need to hold it in our hands. So John, it's about 10 till 12. I'm going to mute myself back out. And, Hani, first, I want to thank you. And I'll kind of wrap us up at the very end and we'll be able to answer questions. But John, I've talked about a lot of the technical pieces here. I'd like you to kind of follow up on the technical, but also, how do people get started if they've never heard of the 7-Minute Life? And so, John, how do they get started? What are your takeaways? And where do you want to go from here with the final 10 minutes of the conversation?
Okay. To get started, well, I'm going to start with our topic here of getting unstuck, all right? And I'm going to answer this, get started, at 2 levels. In terms of taking away from what you learned today, you probably, if you were responding to the title, Get Unstuck, you probably feel as if your whole life is stuck, would be my guess, that globally you feel stuck. And I would immediately say, let go of that by focusing on one thing that's been stuck, okay? One thing, like whether it is a goal that you've wanted to do, maybe it's spending more time with your family, maybe it has to do with your health or finances, maybe it has to do with work. It almost doesn't matter to me where you pick that area. Just pick an area where you feel stuck that's very meaningful and important to you, okay? So the first thing I would do is identify one stuck piece, okay? One stuck piece. And then you'll notice that Hani did 2 things. She figured out how much time she had to work with, and then she figured out what was important to her. And this will tell you what's important to you. All right. Then I would encourage you to take and ask yourself, what is the first action? And that's it. What is the first action that you need to take so that you're making movement in this one area? Okay? We'll keep this really simple. I'm going to give 2 answers to this question, but this is where I'm starting, just at a micro level of this webinar, of take one piece you're stuck at, figure out the first action, and then script it. We talked about unscripted time and prescripted time. Turn this into part of your prescripted life, taking action on it. Even just one step. I think it was Stephen Covey said, problem is you don't need to prioritize your schedule. You need to schedule your priorities. And you need to identify one action step and make sure you make room for it before all the other things, so that it is part of your scripted day tomorrow and not just something you're waiting for extra time for. So this would be my immediate answer to just taking action on this webinar. Now at a higher level, in terms of getting started with living more into the 7-minute life, though this will bring you there. If you don't have a planner, I would either get the downloadable planner or order a physical planner if that's what you work better with, and work through the exercises in the front end and take those seriously and review them regularly. And mine's laying right, let me grab one right here. And here's why I'm saying that. The exercises at the beginning, if you haven't seen a planner, Allison was showing you a number of them a moment ago. For example, you decide your priorities. And this is my brand new planner I just got this week because I'm ready for a new one. And figuring out your purpose, and from that, figuring out your goals. There's sheets for figuring out your goals, financial goals, personal goals, work goals, recording unfinished tasks you have in your life. There's a whole series of activities at the front end of this book. Now, here's what's critical, important for you to understand, particularly if you're already using the planner. If you listened, and you didn't have to listen closely to hear Hani say this, you then don't want to just use this like a calendar or a catch for a to-do list. It's not a big scratch pad for you to just write your never-ending to-do list in another place. I think Hani was spot on in saying that kind of, I think where you started or what's really helped you, and I need to spell this out for anybody who's new here, but there's a little section called 5 before 11 on what we call the daily progress report pages. And these, you can find these on our website. But that 5 before 11, if you did nothing else on this whole page, I would do that 5 before 11, which are 5 high value tasks before 11 o'clock. 5 high value tasks before 11 o'clock. And when I say a high value task, that's not something urgent. What that is something that directly relates to what you did in the exercises at the beginning. It either is an expression of your highest priorities, it's an expression of your purpose, it's an expression or fulfillment of one of your goals.
Hey, John.
Yeah.
Can I ask you to explain and align? And we have had a question when people are commenting, I want to make sure that they're commenting to all panelists and attendees. But if you're talking about 5 before 11, I'd like you to go back to your chalkboard and talk about a specific task that somebody might be stuck on, that first action that they could turn into a 5 before 11 and how they could script that out. So okay. I'd like to really see, not just hear about it, but see how you might take something that someone is stuck on or that you're stuck on.
Well, and I actually asked somebody, what's something you guys are stuck on? Would some of you put some things you're stuck on in there? Like a goal or a task or a project? We make this very real. Or I can do one that people may have just dealt with, or they really got stuck, they didn't deal with it, and they filed an extension. Does anybody know what I'm talking about?
John, we've had a question from Luann that says doing a large invoice that's due. So she's in a business by herself. She's got to invoice a client. So talk about how she could be stuck on that. Pretend it was you. Okay. And then so you're stuck. What's the first action that she can take, and how would she script that out? Okay.
And I'm going to have to ask some questions or may need some help on that one because I'm not used to invoicing clients. So I don't know the full process there. But when it comes, let's see, I'm stuck on me. Oh, that's another question coming in. Okay. Doing a very large invoice that is due. Luann, let me ask you first off, I'm going to ask you a couple clarifying questions. Overall, when you talk about a larger invoice, how long does a larger invoice take to put together? Overall, ballpark, like when all's said and done, are we talking about something that's going to take you a couple hours because you have to gather information? We're talking 30 minutes. Just give me a ballpark sense here. And I'm giving her a moment to do that. There are a few things that when it comes to invoicing, first off, I assume you have to check records and find out how many hours you have put into something or how much material. So I would say check the hours and material that went into the project for that client. In other words, you have to gather the data. And you can correct me if I'm wrong here. I'm not an invoicer, okay? I'm not an accountant. So I'm hypothesizing here. Assume you got to gather that data. And then I take it, once you do that, you actually have to create like the written invoice. And I don't know if you have you may have something like a QuickBooks or some software that you have to enter that data to create that invoice. And then I assume you got to deliver that invoice, whether it's by email or snail mail or whatever. And there may be follow-up.
Okay, John, she has put in chat that it takes approximately 3 hours because she has gathered all the supporting dates and services. That takes a lot of time because she has a poor process that's not automated, which if people are listening to this, boy, that's so true. We do things over and over again, but we haven't created that template. So it takes her 3 hours, which you can't just sit down and do in 3 hours because you're that mental fatigue. So can you see her chat, John?
Yeah, I can. So that's helpful. So I'm gonna break this down for you a little bit. In general, we encourage people to think of a task as 20 minutes or less. And we do that based off of brain science that by and large, our attention span gets maxed out around 20 minutes. And we start hitting what Allison talked about, mental fatigue, where we have to get a break or we have to move into another activity or it becomes counterproductive. So let's say that the bulk of this, data gathering, let's say that's, 2 of the 3 hours. You're going to have to break that down into really about 6 segments or tasks at a max. So it may be that you have to put on your to-do list that this morning I'm going to use, my first task is to gather timesheets, request timesheets from this vendor, okay? Like if you have multiple, it sounds like you have multiple people involved in a project. And that may be a 10-minute or 15-minute task. And then it is get receipts and total them from XYZ, wherever that is. And I would encourage you, this is a recurring thing for you. And I noticed you mentioned the word because I had a poor process that was not automated. Whether it's automated or not, you use the word process there. Anything that's a process, I'd create a checklist for.
Hey, John, although I've covered up what this is for, you just created this for something that, let me try to get that where people can see it. You've just created this checklist so that we don't have to rework out. So this is something we do every week. And almost everything that we try to do, we try to create a template, because I don't know if you can see that, but Teach the Morning Class is John Arnold and Allison. You'll see other tasks. Render and upload the video to Dropbox, Allison Lewis. Edit and upload, John Arnold. So not only do we try to create a template for those pieces that we're working through, but we assign different tasks so that we can just check them off one at a time and not recreate that process. And, like we've tried to break it down. Class reminder, well, John Arnold, that'll probably take 10 minutes. So we've tried to break things down. You just couldn't say, let's do all this, but we've tried to break it down into tiny little pieces. And you can do that in almost any industry. I interrupted you, but go ahead.
Well, that's perfect. And the key there is once you have that broken down, you say, well, really, I can put an hour into this invoice process today. Then you look at that checklist of things that need to be done to get that invoice done. You say, okay, how many of these can I actually get done today? And the other ones you say, they're not going to happen. You go, I'm not going to, those are going to happen Wednesday, or those are going to happen Thursday. But you commit to, I can only realistically do these 5 or these 4 or these 3, or maybe it's 1. And things that are recurring pieces for you that could hang you up. Like I just read your note about it being a nonprofit. You want to be fair and generous to them. I charge for all training and coaching, but then you waive some services and show it as in-kind line. So one of the things that you're going to need on your checklist, or you can just create a policy, or a practice around it, is you're going to have somewhere in your checklist decide how much I will contribute as in kind. Like that's a micro action, deciding that. And it may sound silly to put that on a 5 before 11, but I wonder how many times you've been you've needed to invoice someone, but you've held off on preparing the invoice because you've stumbled around going, well, how much should I charge that? Like you stumble around on that, and you keep delaying that decision of what percentage you're going to charge for and what percentage you're going to contribute. But if you would write down one day, I'm going to decide that today, then now you're over the hump of that's been holding you back. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. It's those little decisions sometime that will hang up an entire process. But if you put it as an actual task that needs to be done, I will decide this, or better yet, put in place I'll call it a policy of, for nonprofits, I contribute in kind 20% of every invoice. Then you remove that you decide it once, and you can always violate your own policy if you want later. You run into an exception. But by having a policy in place and making that decision, globally, this will be my practice. It's amazing how much time that frees you up and it greases the wheels for you to move through that process more rapidly. Is that making sense, and is that helpful?
Yes, I think it is helpful. And I want to thank Luann, because everybody has different projects, but we all face those same pieces that are going on. And Gail had a great question as well, and I'd like to take this question. Gail asked, what about the emotions of being stuck? I feel bad about not doing what I'm stuck on, and because I feel bad, I don't do it, and it goes round and round.
Amen.
That hits right at the core of what we talk about. And if I could ask people to type in amen, 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 which you can go ahead and do, look at that. They're all coming in. Amen, amen. I think when you feel stuck, I think that's the entire embodiment of what we do. This may make you laugh, or maybe not. Can you see in our logo that swirling circle right here? It's the swirling circle of chaos. That's where all of this started, is that we at least for me, I felt like I was spinning. Look at what you just said. I was spinning round and round. Mm-hmm. And that is at the very core. So what do you do about that? The emotions of being stuck. I think you surround yourself with other people, just like we're doing on these webinars, that are right there with you. John, Allison, Honey, none of us have it figured out at all. All I know I can do is wake up in the morning, try to have some kind of plan that I'm going to go through. But there's a lot of failure that we all feel where we end the day and we look at ourselves and all we've done is chase things that didn't matter. We go to bed, and I do a lot of coaching with people, and they tell me, Allison, how come everyone else can get things done? I must be a loser because I don't seem like I'm getting anything done. Well, Gail, the reality is it's rare for any of us to try to go to bed with that free conscious, which is part of what we want to do. Is that John keeps going back to the 5 before 11, which is a whole nother conversation, is that if you can just get a few things done, you know, as he's showing you this, oh, that one's full. This is my new one for the quarter. If you can just get 5 things done that are high value every day, just 5, in a week, you would have accomplished 35 things. And imagine just accomplishing 35 things, starting and finishing them. That helps us break through some of that feeling of overwhelm. But the big thing that I think the 7-minute life is built on, and I'll go back to my own priorities here. And I know we're closing in on 5 minutes until we end, but I hope you can see as I talk about this, it's hard to show. My number 1 priority is faith. Trying to see it. Faith, wisdom, prayer, and look at those last 2, grace and mercy. I think that's the key to what we do. Is I want to encourage people on this class. Hani and I have had several discussions about the power of the emotion of just having that community of people that will circle you in all of this and say, nope, I don't have it figured out either. What are some of the obstacles we're facing? What are some of the successes we're facing? And John goes back and says, if you didn't get it done, what are the 3 wins you had today? What are those? If you didn't get it all done, what can you celebrate today? And I'll tell you, John, as this class ends, 1, I want to celebrate Hani for coming over here, and I'd like to have her have the last word. 2, John, I really appreciate you telling people if you're stuck, we can't fix all of that at once, but we can take that one item. So that's exciting to me. And the third thing that's exciting to me is I see this community. Every time we teach a webinar, I see this community of people that are in the same place that are helping one another do this. So my 3 things would have the friendship with Hani and telling her thank you for being here. 2, letting you tell people you can't fix it all, but what's that one thing you can do? And if I get nothing else done today, to be able to surround myself with like-minded people that have the same struggles and be able to share ideas of how to fix them. So John, I'm going to turn it back over to you and Hani. We've got 4 minutes left. How do you want to wrap it up?
Well, I'll interject one thing real quick. I'm glad I was going to talk about celebrating wins. I'm glad you covered that. But it goes, talking about the emotional struggle, it goes a long way if you'll just do the 2 things we talked about of finding out how much discretionary time you have and then saying, what can I get done in that? It's amazing how much guilt you'll be relieved of by recognizing at the front end of the day, well, I only have this much time, so this is what I can do. And the other things will have to wait, or I'm going to have to do them at another time. It's when we go into the day open-ended and we're just scrambling to get bits and pieces done here. And then at the end of the day, we find ourselves just going, I just failed to get anything done. Whereas opposed to setting that block of actual doable, actionable items in a time you have available, and getting those done and being able to say, you're no longer saying, I didn't get my list done. What happens is you're saying, what I said I would do today and could do today, I completed it. And that feels completely different, though you have the same list. And Hani will probably back me up on that. But, to be able to say, and it's like going back to that 5 before 11 or just whatever it is you come up with to put in that discretionary block you have, of being at the end of the day to be able to say, this is what I intended to do, and I did what I intended. I know there's lots of other things done, but I can celebrate the fact that I did what I needed to do. I did, to use a word that Allison lifts up many, many, many times, enough. And we don't go into the day knowing what enough is when we're not clear on those two pieces of awareness we talked about a moment ago. So we always feel like whatever we did, no matter how much it wasn't enough. So I hope that helps. And I'll turn it over to Hani. And I'm pointing that way because I've got my gallery view on and I'm seeing the three of us and she's over here to me.
Well, I'm just so thankful for the 7-minute life that it does. It's a training program to teach you how to live your best life, not just how to organize. I noticed Jennifer had said something about organizing, and that's how I was using my planner in the beginning, just a to-do list and an organizer. And the training behind it teaches you how to actually live a wonderful life and live the life that you want to live, as opposed to the prescripted that everybody else dumps on you and says, okay, here you go. And I just think, I did pick a couple of things. And if everybody picks one thing that they can do and have that achievable, I did this today, this is what I wanted to do, even if it's one little, like I've actually put in my planner that I'm going to go for a walk every day. And at first, I didn't think I was allowed to do that, but I started putting it in and I started feeling better. And then I put one more thing in and then one more thing in, and until you just have that sense of peace that things are coming together and things are not scripted for me. I'm actually planning my day. So that's what I love about the 7-minute life and the tools. Oh my goodness, the tools are there to do it.
So awesome.
Okay, well, I'll go ahead and wrap this up then. If you're watching this on YouTube, it's the 7-minute life. If you just type in 7 minutes time management, you'll find us. We'd love to hear comments from you. Just go in and click info at the 7-minute life. I'm sure there are people all over the world on YouTube. This is a global problem. And I created this back to your questions about, I was getting a lot done, but what was the point? And a lot of people really are so busy with that mental clutter that they don't even get things done. But even if you were able to improve your time management, would there be an outcome to it? I want to just say thank you. These are webinars we do every Tuesday right now at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. There are a lot of exciting changes that are happening, but Hani, I know it doesn't happen all at once. We really have to immerse ourselves in with people because the work we're doing is life-changing. I want to encourage you that change does not happen in a day, in a week, in a year. That change is a journey that we go through with some success, with some failure, but we continue to go down that journey together because there is an end result of taking our priorities and our purpose and creating that life with meaning, not with perfection, but creating that life with meaning. And in my mind, creating a life with meaning has everything to do with how you use your priorities and your purpose to serve those around you, to make other people's lives better. And we have to have time to do that. So I'm Allison Lewis. I want to thank John and Hani for being here. I hope you'll join us next week. If you're new to the 7-Minute Life, type in 7 minutes time management. You'll find our website and our tools. So I hope to see you next Tuesday at 11 a.m. Central. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Bye.